NATO Secretary-General has met with Emmanuel Macron in Paris to discuss Sweden's so far failed bid to join the military alliance. Russian airstrike on restaurant in Kramatorsk kills at least 11 and injures dozens, but Moscow insists it was a military target.
The European Commission calls for international talks on climate engineering.
NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg has met with French President Emmanuel Macron in Paris. They're said to have discussed Sweden's so far failed bid to join the military alliance and Ukraine's request to join. Turkey has been holding up Sweden's bid, saying the country harbours Kurdish terrorists. Euronews international correspondent Annelies Borges has more.
Ukraine's rightful place is in NATO. The words of NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg, who arrived here in Paris for a meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron. Jens Stoltenberg, who has been meeting NATO heads of state in recent weeks. He met the German Chancellor, but also the Dutch Prime Minister, and had a call with the recently re-elected Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. All that to prepare for a summit in Vilnius, a summit that, according to Estonia's Prime Minister, will unveil a surprise for Ukraine with regards to its membership. It's going to be interesting to see how the next weeks play out. Jens Stoltenberg here in Paris this Wednesday, once again talking about the importance of this alliance, the importance of the defense budget for this alliance in each member state, and once again reinforcing the need to expedite Sweden's membership after that of Finland's. He reiterated the importance of bringing all these like-minded governments, these like-minded countries together to defend this bloc in what he described as an increasingly dangerous world. Annelies Borges in Paris for Euronews.
An act that horrified the Islamic world and embarrassed the Swedish government just days before the NATO summit, where Sweden's bid to join the alliance will be discussed. A man of Iraqi origin burns a copy of the Quran in front of Stockholm's Great Mosque as Muslims around the world celebrate the holiday of Eid al-Adha. The protester was given permission by police, who afterwards charged him with agitation against an ethnic or national group. Some 200 people turned out to watch, but many weren't happy with what they saw.
We should not tolerate these things. We just have to say stop. It's not okay to humiliate other people.
Freedom of speech is very important, but I think burning a religious book, it's not freedom of speech. It's another thing, it's a provocation.
Turkey condemned the event and said Swedish authorities were complicit in Islamophobia. Even before the burning emperor had been holding up Sweden's NATO membership bid over Stockholm's refusal to hand over Kurdish militants that Turkey considers to be terrorists.
The airstrike killed at least 11 people, including 3 teenagers, at a popular pizza restaurant. Another 61 people were wounded. Kramatorsk is a city on the front line which is home to the Ukrainian Army's regional headquarters, and the restaurant was frequented by journalists, aid workers and soldiers. The Ukrainian authorities have now arrested a suspect.
Контррозвідка СБУ по гарячих слідах затримала агента спецслужб РФ, який скоригував російський ракетний удар по кафе у центрі Краматорська 27 червня.
At the beginning of the war, a Russian airstrike on the city's train station killed 61 people. But Moscow has always insisted that it only strikes military targets. This time it claimed the targets were facilities linked to military infrastructure. Meanwhile, Ukraine's counter-offensive continues more slowly than Kiev expected. But the unrest in Russia, created by the Wagner mercenary force, has raised morale in Ukraine as it's revealed big cracks in the strongman image President Putin likes to project.
Путин считает историческим недоразумением и независимость Белоруссии.
They're fighting for the Ukrainians against imperial Russia.
Russian President Vladimir Putin still receives cautious support from some post-Soviet leaders. However, several hundreds of people from the former USSR are now in Ukraine, fighting against Russia's full-scale invasion.
Воспринимают эту войну как не просто войну России против Украины, а как войну России против всех стран, которые когда-то были колониями России или позже были частью Советского Союза.
With an estimate ranging from a couple of hundred to 1,500 people, Belarusian troops are believed to be one of the largest of these groups fighting for Kyiv.
Среди противников режима стал набирать популярность именно силовой сценарий его свержения. И появился на арене вот этот полк Калиновского, и все чаще стали говорить, что в случае победы Украины этот полк может победным маршем пойти и на Минск.
Since February last year, Russian authorities have been pushing for citizens from Central Asian countries to join the army in exchange for a Russian passport. Some of their compatriots are also in Ukraine fighting for Kyiv.
Это в основном много частных случаев, когда люди на эмоциональном фоне решили принять такое важное решение. Некоторые поехали из Центральной Азии в Украину, собственно, для этого. Но большая часть — это, конечно, люди, которые давно уже живут в Украине.
Russian ethnic minorities are also fighting against the Kremlin, such as the Chechens. Experts say there are at least 8 battalion-sized units containing ethnic Chechens fighting against Moscow. Among them are veterans who fought in the Chechen Wars of Independence, a struggle that was violently suppressed by Russia in the early 2000s.
And they see it as part of their common struggle for decolonisation, to use their language, their terms.
Can the weather be manipulated to fight climate change? The European Commission wants to have this debate at the highest international level as it looks at the risks of so-called climate engineering, a contested technology still under development that could help to cool the planet.
We note that geoengineering is discussed and explored in several parts of the world and that it is considered by some as a potential future response to climate change. This is an issue with global implications and considerable risks. Nobody should be conducting experiments alone with our shared planet.
But what exactly is climate engineering, also known as geoengineering, and how can it manipulate the weather? Researchers are already working on several types of technologies that they think could lower temperatures. One is called stratospheric aerosol injection. That means airplanes releasing tiny particles that reflect light back. But according to some experts, hundreds or even thousands of specialized planes working for years would be needed. And then there's marine cloud brightening, an attempt to increase the reflectivity of low clouds with the help of aerosol particles released from boats. There are doubts, though. An important part of the scientific community is critical of these technologies. 400 scientists have sent an open letter expressing their concerns, and among them Frank Bierman, an expert in global governance at Utrecht University.
And these uncertainties cannot go away by research, because in the end, the final impact of these technologies, you will only know when you try it out at planetary scale. You can't really get rid of all the uncertainties by experiments in the lab. And also small-scale outdoor experiments cannot really tell you the full story. They cannot tell you really what are the risks that are that might reveal themselves only when you deploy these technologies at planetary scale over many, many years. Social scientists are really concerned about the geopolitical risk. What happens if some countries do it alone?
A group of scientists, largely in the USA, are advancing these ideas. But the European Commission believes the topic should be discussed at the highest international level to decide if and which kind of regulation is needed.
Outrage in Italy after an apparent act of vandalism at one of the world's greatest heritage sites. A visitor was filmed defacing one of the ancient walls of Rome's Colosseum. He apparently carved his name and that of a young woman who was with him. Another tourist, angered by what he saw, filmed the incident.
Honestly, I would like this person to just kind of learn the lesson. Honestly, at the end of the day, whether he has to pay the fine or not, if learning the lesson means paying the fine, then so be it. But I just honestly want him and anybody else who would think of doing such a thing to realize that this is not acceptable behavior.
Italian authorities have zero tolerance for graffiti or acts of vandalism at their historic landmarks and have vowed to track the man down. In 2014, a Russian tourist was fined €20,000 and given a 4-year suspended sentence for engraving the letter K on one of the Colosseum's walls.
We have been told the area where the incident took place inside the Colosseum has been cordoned off and that the inscription will be soon removed. Italy's culture minister condemned the defacing and called for an exemplary punishment for the so far unidentified man. Now, incidents like this one involving tourists vandalizing ancient buildings are quite frequent in the Italian capital. Hundreds of tourists queue outside the Colosseum waiting to get inside on a daily basis. Well, we asked some of these people, but also Italians as well, what's their take on what happened? Take a listen.
I'm an American citizen, and as an American citizen, it disgusts me that Americans have to be this way when they are in another country. And it really makes Americans look bad, and I'm not at all surprised by the way Europeans or people from other continents look at Americans when they should be setting a much better example.
Mi sembra una cosa stupida. Se devo esprimere qualcosa alla mia ragazza glielo dico e basta. O faccio un gesto e le prendo delle rose.